Hey, what's up, everybody? It's just Charles, and I welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and where we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we have an interesting episode for you guys. You definitely want to stick around for it, so make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. So, I was doing some research this morning, although I'm a little bit under the weather. I was doing some research, and I found a very interesting story on fadeawayworld.net. And basically, the article was highlighting a sit down between Draymond Green and Kyle Kuzma on the Draymond Green podcast, I believe, via the Volume Podcast Network or whatever it is. So I decided to click on the clip to hear what they had to say, right? And as they started to talk, I was really surprised at some of the things that I was hearing, and immediately I said to myself, okay, we have to produce a show around this because this is too interesting. Although I'm not feeling pretty well, I said I do want to get some things off my chest about some of the things that the two of them were saying. So for those of you who actually were unaware of, or who are unaware of some of the comments that Draymond Green and Kyle Kuzma had to make, I'm sure when you guys hear it, it's going to really surprise you, especially with some of the things that Kyle Kuzma was saying. But before we get into that, clip of them talking, this video is brought to you by our sponsor, Aura, who's also the official sponsor of Minnesota Timberwolves. Do you know what the fastest growing crime in America is today? It's identity theft. Imagine trying to log into your email only to see that your password has been changed. Then you start getting weird notifications from your bank and credit cards, only to find out that all of your personal and sensitive information has been totally compromised. If you think it can happen to you and your family, just know that in 2020, over 49 million Americans were victims to identity theft, costing them a combined $56 billion. That is why we are excited to partner with Aura, who's the sponsor of this video. Aura is the #1 identity theft and financial fraud protection. Aura monitors the dark web and alerts you if any of your passwords and accounts have been breached. And funny enough, after using Aura, I discovered some of my credentials were floating around in the dark web, and the app showed me exactly when and where the breach happened. In addition, Aura allows you to set spending alerts, and they'll notify you of any suspicious transactions. Aura is 4 times faster than any of its competitors in alerting you if someone is trying to open a credit card or obtain a loan using your name. And remember this, every 14 seconds, someone becomes a victim of identity fraud. Don't let it happen to you. Now click the link in the description and try Aura for free for 2 weeks and see if any of you or your family's personal information has been compromised. Start your free trial at aura.com/dreamerspro. And when you try Aura, by using the link in the description below, also know that you're supporting this channel. Thank you. So what we want to do is we want to play this audio exchange between the two of them. Is a bit lengthy. That's why, we're trying to be as concise as possible. So we want to play that. We want you guys to take a listen to it in its entirety, and then we're going to really come back and unpack this thing. So take a listen to this exchange between Draymond Green and Kyle Kuzma. We'll come back here. Take a listen to that.
It's a 3-part statement, actually.
Right.
And the first part being, I don't understand why people compare errors, but when they do, I had a question. Do they take into account the difference in styles? Because there's no way they can be taken into account the difference of styles. Because I am sitting here watching, and I was literally sitting, I watched the entire game 5 of the 1998 finals, Chicago Bulls versus Utah Jazz. And I'm sitting here watching the game, and I'm like, man, Rodman is incredible. Like, MJ is amazing. Pip, incredible. Karl Malone, insane. John Stockton, although they had his ass bottled up, something crazy.
Oh, for sure.
Him and Hornacek had no chance. They had no chance. And I'm appreciating all of their greatness, right? But I'm watching it, and I couldn't help but say, I just don't understand how you can compare us to this team.
Right.
Not that Michael Jordan isn't great or the greatest player, or however you want to slice it. It's not taking anything away from that.
Right.
Not one bit. But just the style of basketball alone, I mean, there's a guy catching it at the free throw line, a guy cutting to the corner, and a guy flashing to the post.
Right.
There's no spacing. And so I'm watching that, and I'm like, the point that I was making was, you see what I'm saying? We'll beat this team by 20 and we'll beat them by 40. The actual point that I was making is, And that's why it's dumb to compare eras.
It's dumb. And then it's also play styles and it's officiating. Well, are we going to play with hand checks or are we going to play freedom of movement?
Facts.
Right? There's certain teams that can get away with certain things. Like, I believe if the Showtime Lakers, they would dominate this era because they were, I mean, I was watching Magic in the 80s, just highlights like earlier in the summer. People don't realize, yo, he was fast. No, he was fast as hell. Like, he was getting the rebound up the court in 3 dribbles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the NBA now, right?
Absolutely.
Right or wrong. Kill. But certain teams might have been a little different. Great.
Mm-hmm.
You have great players, whatever. Jordan being this era, he's averaging crazy numbers too, regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Even crazier numbers.
For sure.
Right? Now it might be a different type of if Jordan played in this era, it might be like, yo, ain't nobody touching him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from a point standpoint, a championship standpoint. But you can't compare it. It's just too tough.
That's my whole sentiment. I hope people one day understand that. Do you remember AOL? Are you old enough
Yeah,
to
you got
remember
mail.
AOL?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Dial up.
Can you compare AOL to high-speed internet today?
No chance.
Was AOL great when we used it?
Amazing.
Okay. The internet great?
Amazing.
But just because the internet great doesn't mean AOL wasn't great when it was being used, right?
So you basically heard the exchange there. And I'm trying to be calm today, right? I'm trying to be very, very mellow today. But this is my biggest question, and I'm being serious about it. What makes you think, in this case we're talking to Draymond, what makes you think that your team would beat the Chicago Bulls? What exactly are you basing that off of? I assume you must be saying that the Warriors would beat the Bulls if they're playing this current style, because the Warriors they're not playing that style. So I'm assuming you're referring to the fact that, okay, we would beat that team playing with the style that we're playing right now. And the question then becomes, what makes you think that those Chicago Bulls would not be able to adapt to this brand of basketball? And if you guys paid close attention to what to what Kyle Kuzma said, he said, "Wait a minute, are we going to be hand checking? Are we going to be, elbowing guys every time they flash through the paint? Is that going to happen?" And then this dude had the courage to say facts. How you going to say facts with a point that refuted your point? Be like, yo, facts. Like, that's the first thing I wanted to say. This goes back to what I've been saying all along. For whatever reason it is, some people believe that the players today are capable of doing things that players in the past couldn't without bringing a single shred of evidence to prove it. They will talk about players' abilities to shoot the three and dribble the ball. And they will talk about, oh, because these guys can dribble the ball so well and shoot the ball so well, this means that somehow they're like this advanced, version of basketball. These guys are just something unbelievable. And to that I say, I can bring up a plethora of players from the past that had outstanding post abilities, the ability to play in the post, that none of these guys in today's era of basketball would be able to defend or play or play at that level. Yes, players today can dribble the ball and shoot very well, but how many basketball players can play with their backs to the basket? How many guys there are really good defenders actually? If you sneeze on a player, they're going to call a foul. So if defense is being discouraged in today's era of basketball, one would assume that defenders in the past were much better and post players in the past were much better. So it goes back to what I was saying. I think a lot of these guys want it so bad to be that these players in this era are somehow capable of doing extraordinary things that those guys simply could not do. I got a question for you guys. Have y'all ever seen a Jerry West highlight tape? Have you guys ever sat back and watched a Jerry West highlight tape? Jerry West, okay, Jerry freaking West was as good as any offensive player playing in the NBA today. Have you ever seen Jerry West drive and stop on a dime and pull up for a mid-range jump shot, with balance and hit that shot? Have y'all ever seen that? So when people are talking, I mean, when I was going through some of the Jerry West highlights, I was thoroughly impressed. It was incredible. He was a magician when it came to playing offense, but nobody talks about it. So what, and this is what I think. I think a lot of guys are just unaware. Another point I want to bring up. If you guys noticed, when Kyle Kuzma said to Draymond Green, he said that the Showtime Lakers would dominate in this era, Draymond Green said facts. He was like, facts, without realizing that the Showtime Lakers played in the 80s. So how can you say facts to a team that played in the 80s, agreeing with the guy saying that team would dominate in today's era, but then turn around and say, oh, no. This team that we're playing on today would definitely beat those teams in the past. What? But hold on a second. You just said that you shouldn't compare eras. So why in that moment were you agreeing with that comparison? None of this makes sense. And there's something I want to say, but I'll refrain from saying it. Another thing he said was that Jordan would dominate in this era, and then he went on to agree with him. So if Jordan would dominate in this era, it goes back to the original point which I was making, which was for you to feel that the Warriors team would dominate that Bulls team, it would mean that they're playing with today's rules, and you somehow believe that those guys would not be able to play in today's rules, which is a joke. It is laughable on its face. Today, players don't even hit the mid-range jump shot. That was something that was performed at a high rate back when Jordan was playing, but they don't use it today. So what does that mean? That guys are shooting more threes today, so therefore what? A lot of this stuff that these guys are saying is not even scientific. It's just guys going up there trying to hype up their own era, pretty much. That's all it is. And finally, when you say you can't understand why people compare eras. So let me ask you a question then. If you don't compare eras, how are you supposed to comprise all of these all-time lists? How do you do it? If you listen to Draymond Green talk about Stephen Curry, he believes he's one of the greatest players of all time. But how did you get to that conclusion? If you were comparing Stephen Curry against himself, then how would you know he's one of the greatest players of all time? You would obviously have to be comparing him with other players. So we compare eras all the time. And finally, this is the point I want to end with. Towards the end of that clip, Draymond Green was trying to make a point about comparing eras. And he said, have you ever heard of AOL? Kyle Kuzma goes, yes, I've heard of AOL. Yes, bro, I heard of it. He's like, well, comparing both eras is like comparing AOL speed to this speed. Bro, let me ask you, what are you talking about? What does that even mean? How is comparing the Chicago Bulls to the Golden State Warriors like comparing eras, like comparing AOL to high internet speed? I'm having a hard time. It's so stupid. I'm having a hard time trying to make sense of that stupidity. How does that even, what kind of what was that? So basically you're saying, according to you, that basically, according to what you just said, since you're comparing internet speed and bandwidth, you're basically saying that the Golden State Warriors would beat the Bulls because what? They could run faster than them. I'll catch y'all on the next. This is it. This is what y'all be listening to. I'll catch y'all on the next episode, man. I'm out.